It's been 20 years since the big tobacco settlement, the one that came after the nation's cigarette makers got caught red-handed in a decades-long cover-up of their products' risks and addictive qualities. As part of their punishment, they agreed to pay hundreds of billions of dollars. But it turns out all that money didn't go where you might have thought. And because of it, another battle is still quietly being fought out in court all these years later. Today's cover story is the forgotten tobacco war.
Winston tastes good like a cigarette should. Winston tastes good like a cigarette should.
Generations have never turned on TV and seen ads like this.
Yeah, buddy, Winston tastes good like a cigarette should.
Nothing but the best for Mr. Ricardo.
Smoking was endorsed by celebrities.
Thank you.
You see how easy it is to keep a man happy? Why not give your husband a carton of Philip Morris cigarettes?
Smart move. I want to taste something.
It was heavily marketed as the habit of manly men.
I get to working on it, and I even forget to eat. You don't forget to smoke, though. I always smoke when I work. They go together.
But in the 1990s, whistleblower documents exposed an epic cover-up. Cigarette makers had long hidden what they knew about their products' dangers and addictive qualities.
This is an industry that kills 400,000 people a year in this country.
In 1998, the four biggest cigarette makers agreed to pay 46 states the largest civil settlement in history, $246 billion over 25 years. But you might be surprised to hear that wasn't the neat and tidy ending one might have expected. Is it accurate to say the big giant tobacco settlements we heard about weren't going to the victims? They were going to states for counter-advertising and things like that.
That's right, for health campaigns. But you know, the victims didn't get anything from that.
Not a penny of the $246 billion went to the actual smokers who'd been flooded with deceptive marketing that portrayed smoking as glamorous or even healthy, only to get hooked and develop cancer or other serious diseases.
It's almost like a Grisham novel.
Attorney Ken Bird represents some of those smokers and their families today. He helps tell the rest of the story. After the big tobacco settlement with the states, a group of 700,000 Florida smokers won a separate class action lawsuit against the cigarette makers worth $145 billion. But on appeal, the courts decided each case would have to be tried individually instead. As a result, 8,000 individual cases were filed. It's taking years for the plaintiffs to get their day in court.
Each person has to come one by one to file their claim.
Do a lot of these plaintiffs or victims and alleged victims die as they're awaiting these trials?
They do. Unfortunately, part of the strategy of the tobacco industry has been to delay these things so that smokers will die, because under certain circumstances, that benefits them under Florida law.
One of the victims, Florida postal worker Juanette Smith.
How old were you and your wife when the two of you met?
She was like 17 and I was like 21.
She was already a smoker?
Yes, ma'am.
James Smith says his wife began smoking when she was about 11 in the 1940s.
To my opinion, it's addictive. I said, well, I'll quit this if you'll quit that, you know. But she said, you don't understand. I just can't. And she tried, but she couldn't.
Juanette got lung cancer in her early 40s and joined the group in the Florida lawsuit. She died at age 47.
And she just told me before she passed away, I mean, why? But she just said, I don't want you to drop this. I want you to pursue it. You know, we have two sons. I want you to pursue the lawsuit. I want you to keep it going. I said, okay, whatever you want me to do, that's what I'll do.
That was back in 1995. James remarried and had another family, but continued the lawsuit. Finally, in 2012, there was a trial. A jury concluded Juanette was 45% responsible for her lung cancer and R.J. Reynolds was 55% responsible. The jury awarded $620,000.
We tried the case.
Bird says the challenge at any trial is getting the jury into the mindset of a bygone era. Jurors who forgot or never even knew what the smoking culture was like.
You have to bring in a jury, some of which are, too young to remember, for example, that cigarette advertising was all over the place in the 1950s and when televisions first came on.
Time out for many men of medicine usually means just long enough to enjoy a cigarette. And because they know what a pleasure it is to smoke a mild, good-tasting cigarette, they're particular about the brand they choose.
They had doctors advertising cigarettes or people dressed in doctor outfits.
Doctors in all branches of medicine, doctors in all parts of the country were asked, "What cigarette do you smoke, doctor?" Once again, the brand named most was Camel. Yes, according to this repeated nationwide survey, more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette.
The tobacco industry had funneled millions of dollars to the American Medical Association to stop them from taking a stand on whether smoking caused disease or not. Had dramatic effects. Meanwhile, they're showing doctors in ads. They're showing how glamorous it is. And so it was just a different time and era, because today, of course, a lot of people go, well, doesn't everybody know smoking's bad for you? The tobacco industry tries to paint it that since there were reports about smoking, that everybody must have known.
The background and detailing of the report issued today by the United States Surgeon General's Advisory Committee on Smoking and Health.
It was the 1960s when public health authorities, including the U.S. Surgeon General, began sounding the alarm.
Cigarette smoking is related to higher death rates in a number of disease categories.
The strongest relationship between cigarette smoking and health was in the field of lung cancer.
But millions were hopelessly hooked.
Will it be enough to stop a habit that has become part of our national life?
No, because I like smoking.
Well, I enjoy it. Then do you think the risk is worth enjoying? Well, I think so, yes.
Well, I've tried to give it up before, and I find it impossible, for more than a day or two.
To give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
As late as the mid-90s, tobacco executives were still in denial.
Do you believe nicotine is not addictive?
I believe nicotine is not addictive, yes.
I believe that nicotine is not addictive.
The old videos are shown to jurors over and over as Byrd and his team try the cases one by one in court.
It's almost like Groundhog Day in some of these trials, because the documents against the tobacco industry are very similar.
What was the quote about the money bags? What were they talking about?
They've been able to deliver nicotine within 10 seconds to the brain, which is part of what makes this so addictive and so deadly, is that you inhale nicotine.
And it said it was faster than alcohol or marijuana.
Right, and they were happy about that. And they say, the only problem we're going to have is get a big enough bag to carry all the money to the bank.
The tobacco companies wouldn't agree to an interview for this report. One tally in 2015 found that out of the 8,000 Florida cases, there had been 141 verdicts, 90 for the smokers, 51 for the cigarette makers. A big reason the Florida trials have gone on so long is because of lengthy appeals. Many cases are overturned or the verdicts reduced. Last month, Byrd was in Atlanta for the tobacco company's appeal of a case his client won in 2015. They're trying to have the verdict thrown out. For James Smith, the legal journey spanned 23 years and finally ended last January when a court denied R.J. Reynolds' challenge of the jury verdict. For many others, the forgotten tobacco war goes on.
I love my wife, and then the thing about it is I had 2 sons, and they love their mother. At 47 years old, it's cutting your life short.
Right now, there are about 50 of these Florida tobacco trials per year. At this rate, it'll take until about 2075 for everyone to have their day in court. But it's unlikely all of them will, as elderly plaintiffs pass away and some families